tsunamis or war or tornadoes, hurricanes, whatever it is, whatever the disaster is that comes in and wipes out the state structure, the authoritarian structures that keep everybody in check and make sure everyone follows the rules, all that. Once those things collapse and are taken away, we would expect, based upon the propaganda we've all heard our entire lives about, how man is a wolf to man and all this kind of stuff, and how we're basically just chimpanzees held at check by the state. When the state falls away, people don't rape and pillage. In fact, what people do is help one another. And there's this amazing quote from the man who founded disaster sociology. Had spent his entire life working in this area. And toward the end of his life, he said, what I've learned is that the true disaster is daily life. People who live through disasters remember those years as the best time in their lives because they weren't isolated. They had a sense of meaning. They had a sense of community. They were helping one another. This is what we're born to do. This is the human design. And in fact, the modern world is in conflict with that design. So maybe it's not such a terrible thing. A lot of people are suffering already because of climate change and refugee disasters all over the world. So I don't mean to minimize the suffering of people, but the silver lining in all this for me is that maybe it's not such a bad thing to have collapse, because the people who survive it will actually probably live better than they're living right now. It's hard to call that optimistic, but that's all I got.
No, I'm kind of chuckling to myself because I imagine that you used to be the person that everyone wanted to sit next to at a dinner party, the author of Sex at Dawn, and now you're talking about catching cholera from pigs and that kind of thing.
Exactly, that's a good point. Nobody wants to sit next to me anymore.
Have you heard of Andrew McAfee? He's an author. His argument is that things are getting better with technology, not worse, because he says, for example, you used to need a camera, a GPS unit, a landline telephone, an answer machine, a tape recorder, and now you just have a smartphone. And he says that passenger cars are getting lighter, so they don't make them cheaper to produce. And he's saying even though there'll be more people in the future, they will use fewer natural resources. And he's got a very upbeat message. What do you kind of think of some of those arguments around technology?
I'm frustrated by those arguments because I've been hearing them my whole life. I'm 57 years old, and for my whole life I've been hearing how we're just around the corner from free energy and a cure to cancer and supersonic flight and space colonies and jetpacks and the rest of it. And we never seem to quite get there. I think that what is happening is that people want to hear that message. It's a very gratifying message. It makes people want to sit next to you at the dinner party. But when you sort of try to look at it objectively, or at least, my version of objectively, which admittedly is subjective. But when I try to step back and say, in order to understand whether things are getting better, right, a very sort of vague phrase, we need to first define our terms. What does better mean?